Caitlin, thank you so much for joining
Hey
me
there.
today. It's good to see you. We were
Thank
just
you.
talking about your view a little bit though, and I asked you if those were sailboats behind you, and they're not.
Right. So I live in Tarrytown, New York, which is 25 miles north of Manhattan. And really strangely, we can actually see the towers of downtown Manhattan from my street, even though we're 25 miles away. It's really weird. It's like Oz in the distance. That behind me is our new bridge, which is the old bridge is the Tappan Zee. Now it's the Mario Cuomo, whatever. But it's our gorgeous new bridge. And I remember hearing the sound of the pilings being driven into the river when it was started. So it's very nice. I just drove across it about 20 minutes ago. Yeah. Anyway, so that's my view. This is my outdoor office. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I
Yeah, I love it.
my outdoor office is not as sophisticated. It involves me sitting in a chair with my legs propped on another chair and trying to balance my cat. And
There you go. we have no cat, but yeah.
yes, wait, no, you don't have a cat. You have a dog though, right?
No, just a husband.
Oh, for some reason I thought you had a dog. I'm not sure why.
No, we keep discussing a dog, but we have not done the dog. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you decide to get a dog, I highly recommend a senior, just because they've already gone through the puppy phase. There's no chewing. So they're great companions, but they're not, they're not
A good idea. Hadn't thought of that. Okay, cool. All right.
Okay, so we just talked a little bit about where you're from, and I wanted to touch on that because it seems like you've moved around a lot, and
Yep.
I'm curious where you're originally from. Tell me a little bit about that, and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So I'll try to make it short, but I've got lots. So born in Vancouver, Canada. My dad is Canadian. My mom is American, which is how I'm sitting in New York legally. I got a green card through my mom. So not a citizen, but a green card person. So lived in Vancouver ages 0 to 2. My favorite story, because I'm a complete traveler, I love to be in motion, was apparently my parents took the back seat out of the car, threw in my crib, and drove from Vancouver to Mexico when I was like a baby. So there's my first trip. And then my dad, who was very adventurous, and I don't know where he got this kind of luck. He admits it was unbelievable luck. Sort of at the dawn of television, sort of 10 years into TV, the BBC, of all things, hired him to move to London and make documentaries. Had not gone to film school, had not graduated university. And so we lived in London, 2 to 5. And then, which is really cool, my dad won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is like the biggest thing you get for his documentary. But the BBC said, we don't like the image that you portrayed. It was about juvenile delinquents. And he said, well, you can't censor me, I'm out of here. And then we moved back to Canada. So lots of running around. So grew up in Canada, and then wanted to use my French. I speak fluent French. I won the best fellowship imaginable, which has since ended, to Paris when I was 25. Just a life-changing experience. 28 journalists from 19 countries. So I now have friends all over the world. We worked in English and French. We traveled all over Europe and did 4 solo reporting trips at the age of 25, 10-day trips alone. Went to Sicily, went to Denmark. I mean, we can talk about how that shapes you. It gave me tremendous confidence because there's nobody there to help you. Like, you're just alone in Sicily and nobody speaks English, like they warned you. So I worked in French. You have to be flexible. And then I came back to the Globe and Mail, which is Canada's best newspaper. And that was my dream job, and became a feature writer and a reporter there in Toronto. And then, got bored, which journalists do, right? And spoke fluent French and went to the Montreal Gazette. So I worked there for a year and a half, met my first husband, fell madly in love, followed him to New Hampshire. God help me, I hated New Hampshire. And then we came to New York. So I've been in New York ever since. And my last fancy job was the New York Daily News. So I've had 3 big daily newspaper experiences, which were incredibly helpful for freelancing, which we can talk about. And I've been freelance this time. I've been freelance a lot this time since 06. So 14 years, long time. So that sort of sums it up. And then also author of 2 books. 1, and here's my other one, 2.
Which one's the gun book?
This is the gun book, Blown Away. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, I have some questions specifically about that.
Yeah. So that's the quick race through my career.
So as a more general question, do you make, because we've just talked about some books that you've written, do you make a majority of your freelance income from writing books or from writing articles, or is it kind of a combo? Like, how does
the books are impossible. I love writing books. These are old. I mean, Mauled is 2011, so that's a while ago now, and Blown Away was 04. So no, there's no money. I mean, you get your advance, if you're really lucky. And some people are really lucky, and I wish I was that person, then you get a big advance, which I didn't. It was adequate, but it wasn't amazing. And the joke with book advances, and we can talk about books, that's a whole other thing. The the word advance is actually very misleading, because on my last book, they give you 25% up front, and that's not very much. And you pay taxes and you pay 15% to your agent. So there you go. You don't get the second amount till you've turned in your manuscript. That could be a year later or longer. You don't get your third payment till it's published. That's another at least 6 months, if not longer. And then the final part of my advance was a year after publication. That is not what I would call advance. I would call that late. So no, there's no money to be made unless you're, a big bestseller. Some people are. I wish I was one. I'm very proud of my books, but I didn't expect them to be big sellers. Maul got great reviews, so I'm delighted with that, and it sold well. The bulk of my income now for the moment is actually, it's a mix of content marketing and journalism. So it's not books. Yeah. I have 2 book ideas that I'm sort of endlessly noodling and working on, and one of them needs a tremendous amount of reporting, and it's hard to report right now. So I don't know if it's doable, which is very frustrating. And the other is actually a book about journalism, and I'm still noodling about whether that's workable and doable. So I've got 2 projects, but they're sort of back burner for the moment.
Got it. Yeah, I find that that's usually the answer is like multiple streams. And I'm also doing copywriting. Like, I don't think I've talked to one journalist who hasn't had to do any content marketing, because I feel like the majority of us have to do that to make ends meet. So
for sure. Yeah.
So you before you went freelance in 2006, you were a staffer, and you said you've had these 3 different experiences as a staffer. Yeah. And you told me earlier that prepared you to be a freelancer, or to be a better freelancer. And I wanted to ask you how that sort of happened, or how that played out for you, because as you're obviously aware, like, desk jobs are really few and far between. So if we can get some advice from someone who has had a desk job, that could be really valuable.
Yeah, sure. And it really kind of breaks my heart, because those jobs are very difficult now. They're almost impossible. My last job was the New York Daily News, which was then the 6th largest paper in the country. So I'm very proud of that. Fairly terrifying, a New York tabloid. I'd never worked in New York, and I'd never written for a tabloid. No pressure. And it's very different from a broadsheet being like the Times, a big paper. Tabloids, very different way of thinking. And I can be honest enough to say that I did a 1,000-word feature for the business section. And I went to my editor, who was much younger, and said, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to write. I don't know how to write this tight. 1,000 words is nothing. And he was great, and he helped me a little bit. And it really changed how I think about my work, which as a freelancer is huge. So my favorite lesson from the Daily News was get the quote. Get the quote. It might be your lead. It might be your kicker. It might be the best anecdote of the story. But then stop reporting. Like, you don't need 12 of them, you need 1. And so it sharpens your ear to realize when you have it, fine, slam it down, go on to the next source. So it's taught me to be much more efficient. I write really fast, which I did anyway. I'm just more efficient in my reporting. So that was a great lesson. And I kind of really loved, the Daily News is like a 1940s movie. I mean, it's really crazy. Like, people swear a lot and throw things, and it's pretty bizarre. It wasn't a ton of fun, but it was a good experience. What it reminded me is that you have to be tough. I read your transcript with Lola, and it was interesting how each of us is different in the stories that we want to do. The stories that I want to do tend to be heavy and complicated and difficult. So I was one of the first in 2006 to report about kids coming in and DHS putting them in houses, not cages then, but houses. Like one in Queens, like in New York City. And my editor, who knew everything, was like, I've never heard of this. I'm like, well, it's because I'm a good reporter. I found this story for you. And so it also kind of restored my confidence that, yeah, I am a good reporter, and I know how to break national stories. That's not rocket science. Even if I've never worked in a New York paper and I've never worked in a tabloid, if you have good instincts, and I know you're well trained, you went to J school, which I never did, those don't go away. And so I think once you have that sense of confidence, like, I can do this, because, freelancing stuff, and you get rejected and whatever. And so that was helpful. And I think also the variety. I'm a generalist. I don't specialize. I don't want to specialize. So my latest story that just went up live like this week is on STEM education for Mechanical Engineering magazine. Seems unlikely, but the editor was great. I met him at a conference a year and a half after we met. He gave me the assignment, which I loved. Then, of course, he got fired, and I had a new editor, blah, blah, blah. But my point is that I'm not scared to jump into things I don't know. And I see a lot of freelancers, which I really want everybody to stop already with this, is the imposter syndrome. Like, I'm sorry, if you have basic skills, get going. If they're really weak, get some coaching, which I do, or read a book, or take a class, or take a seminar. Like, don't just go like, I'm too scared to do this because A, your competition isn't, and B, they're ready to go, and C, they're going to do it. So like, do you want to pay rent this month or don't you? You can't. And I'm sorry to be very hard about this, but I think it's indulgent. I think at a certain point you have to say, I have skills. Yes, I'm nervous. I'm nervous every time I hit send, and I've done this my whole life. And I'm only nervous because, of course, every new client's a new client, and I want them to love it, right? I mean, this is what we all feel. So that's not unique to me or unique to freelance, but it doesn't paralyze me. And I think, you know, this, we see a lot of this on the job boards and the conversations, that if it's not perfect, there's no such thing. Perfect doesn't exist. And I think people beat themselves to death trying to make it perfect. It's like, just hit send once it's accurate, lively, well told. You know, they're either going to like it or they're not. And if they've already given you the assignment, they liked enough of you, which should give you, I would hope, the confidence to say, I can do this, even if you're nervous. I interviewed this morning a cancer researcher at Johns Hopkins, and like, that could be terrifying, right? And he started using words of 6 syllables, and he's like, I know you know what they mean. I'm like, actually, I didn't, but I can look it up, you know, and the rest of the interview was fine because there were 2 words in a 45-minute interview that I didn't know, because the rest of it is doable. And if I was too scared to take that assignment, I would have missed the best gig of my year, which is for the Pancreatic Cancer Foundation. They found me on Twitter. They said, we'd like you to blog for us. I said, thank you very much. We signed a big contract for 7 stories. I mean, that's just fantastic. This is only my 3rd one. But my point is, had I been really nervous, I could have said, but I'm not a science writer. I've never written about cancer. I mean, like, you know, I can't. And instead of like, great, when do we start? Which is not all take on things I don't know. I'm not going to mislead somebody. I think that's very unethical. But I think there's a fine line between I'm nervous and, you know, not to be dismissive, a panic attack, which I'm not being dismissive. Some people have them. This is a nervous making business, right? Yeah. Every new client, every new assignment, they could hate it. Luckily they don't, but they could, right?
Yeah, I get a lot of DMs that are like, you know, I got X number of rejections. I got, you know, I'm not getting any responses. How do you deal with it? Does it ever get better? And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, you're never going to be any less upset when you get rejected. I still get, like, I have been in edits for this article for Cosmopolitan on crystal mining for 3 weeks now. And it hurts when you get, you know, a shit ton of edits back, and then you feel like, well, am I ever going to get this piece to where it needs to be? What was wrong with me? Why didn't I hit the mark? But those feelings don't ever go away. You know, you're never less scared, but like you said, you have to keep going, and somebody, probably a straight white dude, is going to be pitching. So if it's not you, like, you know.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say, not to disrespect multiple edits, and I'm lucky and I'm a bit older, I've done this a long time, I don't get a lot of edits. I just don't. I think I just kind of know the game just from having done it for so long. I'm also really quite fussy with the editors, not in a diva way, but I want to know what it is they want. How many links? What's the tone? I'll say, like, okay, I'm looking at 10 sources. Does that make sense to you? Like, I'm going to lay that out to some degree so that there's no like, whoa, but we expected blah, blah, blah. Like, and I have a metric, a standard metric, which is anybody can do what they want. Let's say the story is 1,000 words. For every 250 words, new source. So 1,000 words, 4 sources. If I'm giving you 6, that's a gift. If I'm giving you 7 or 8, you got to pay me really well because I'm really busting my ass for you. Not that I say that, but that's how I manage my time very efficiently. And it's not a huge lift to find 4 sources. I can write 1,000 publishable words in an hour. No exaggeration. So I'm super efficient. And that's, I think, you know, how you get stuff done. I don't get rejected a lot. I'm really annoyed. An editor just said, hey, pitch me. And I sent her 3 times the same pitch. And it's a fantastic idea. And I haven't even heard from her. So I'm like, are you dead? Like, so it's more, I don't feel rejected. I'm sometimes just more frustrated as you are. It's like the bills don't stop. And it's a good idea. And to go to, you know, another point, which is really interesting, my ideas don't always go to 12 different outlets. That one was very specifically aimed at a very specific section of the Times. It doesn't really fit nicely anywhere else. So that's kind of a challenge, right? It's like it's just tailor-made, and she didn't even answer. So we'll see.
Yeah, I had an experience. I guess I don't mind saying this. If someone gets mad, they can take that with me. I had an experience of times where I pitched them a story 2 weeks ago and they rejected it. And now a freelancer is doing the same exact story for them. And I'm like, ah! Those frustrations never go away, but you still have to keep going. You got to keep rolling. But
Yeah.
I wanted to call back out what you said because it's so unique and interesting. You know, for every 250 words, you have a new source. I've never heard anybody say that, so I just wanted to go
Oh,
back and like
yeah.
put a bow on that nicely because I think that's really interesting.
Thanks.
It's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Well, it's just I mean, you know, to me, it makes sense. I mean, think about every story you've ever read. You want it to be well reported. You want it to be well sourced. You want it to be interesting. And realistically, 1,000 words, you've got a lead, you've got a kicker. Well, that's probably a couple hundred words right there. You've got some exposition. You've got a nut graph. I mean, you know the language. Everybody watching this probably knows these words. So, you know, how many quotes can you fit in there? You know, and each quote might be 100 words. Well, that's already 400, 600. We're already almost 800 and you haven't even started writing yet, right? So to me, it's just a very efficient way to manage time. And what I really like about that is it forces you to be selective. So if you've done a Haro search, and I know you've done them, right? Sometimes Haro just kind of like buries you in, pardon my French, and shit. You're like, okay, well, you know, where's the stuff? And I call it the beauty contest. And the beauty contest when I'm sourcing is literally diversity, age, income, race, gender, sexuality, geography, like you name it. I wanted to get as diverse as I can. I've only got 4 sources. I've got to be very thoughtful but I like that discipline. It forces you to say, oh, well, I have New York, I need Atlanta. Oh, I've got Chicago. I have a Black person. I have a gay person. Okay, I think I'm getting there. It forces you to think that way. I don't write it down. It's just a part of my process. Having said that, though, so I had a piece that ran my best piece this year. I'm incredibly proud. I'm actually teaching it to a class in Utah tomorrow. I'm so excited. 5,000 words, longest piece I've ever written, except for book chapters on the Canadian healthcare system. So that was terrifying. That has 30 sources. That's a lot of sources. So if you do the math, help me out, 1,000 words times 4, there shouldn't have been 30. There should have been maybe 20. But it's.
I was about to say, don't ask me to do math. That's not my.
Yeah, I think that's the number. But my point is, to be blunt, that's a showcase clip, and we can talk about that. But I think, you know, at least 2 or 3 times a year, yeah, you're paying bills. But you want a clip that you look at and go, God damn, this is my best. And this you show to an agent, or this you show to an editor, or this becomes a sample chapter for your book. But this is the piece you're like, yeah, this is what I do, and this is what I do really well. And I lost money on it. And I'm okay saying that publicly because that's the nature of this crummy industry. The money was good. It was a good paycheck. And they gave me travel expenses. And 1 week in a major city, 1 week was twice the cost of my travel expenses because that's what a major city costs. And that's what the reporting demanded. And that's to go to the point I've said earlier. I have a husband. He's a freelancer. He's in the hallway photo editing the US Open right now. And so we, as a couple, made a decision financially. We're gonna take a hit on this one. We didn't lose tens of thousands, but we lost maybe 2,000 or 3,000. I mean, it's a significant amount of money. But at the end of the day, it's a phenomenal story, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And it, you know, for all we know, it could influence healthcare policy because it's that good. It's that well researched. And if that's the price, literally the price we paid, it's once a year. I don't do it every month. I'm not going to do it every month. And it's a great outlet, and the editor was fantastic. So for me, it was from beginning to end an absolute joy. And we don't get to say that about every story, right? I mean, I wish we could, but sometimes it's rare at this point.
But that's a really interesting point that you bring up about how we do, some of us get, and I'm really guilty of this, get stuck in the grind of just like, pitch, okay, I gotta send X number of pictures, I gotta make X number of dollars, and so I'm going to do this piece and this piece and this piece. And as you were saying that, okay, well, in 2020, what would be my 2 or 3 like hallmark pieces? And I don't know off the top of my head. Like I would have to go back and look through my portfolio. So that's a really interesting way to think of it. You do have to invest in your career development.
You have to. And thanks for being so honest, because it's the same for me. Sorry, I got helicopters here. They're noisy. Welcome to my life. Yeah, it's a real challenge. And, you know, I grind out stuff too. We all do. But, you know, you get one life. And, you know, I've got friends whose husbands have like dropped dead overnight. They're widowed overnight, you know, and things can happen really quickly, right? Even if you're young. And you know, it may sound really stuffy, but I don't care because people don't use this language much. I think about legacy. You know, what's my legacy as a writer? I've written 2 books. I'm very proud of them. They got great reviews. It's only 2 books. I've got friends who've written 10 books. I am not worthy. But that American Prospect piece came out in January. There's no question. Anybody on Biden's campaign should have read it. And if they haven't, I need to send it to them. And I say that with absolute confidence. They should be reading my stuff, because anybody who wants to understand single payer healthcare, nobody else is spending 3 months on this but me. And I will tell you, and this is important to hear, that it was rejected. So I tried Time. They sniffed. No, we're not interested. I tried HuffPost, not interested. And I tried Marie Claire. I have contacts in these places. And they're like, not interested. And I said, let's do healthcare through the lens of women for Marie Claire. Not interested. And thank God a friend who'd written for American Prospect said, how about them? Never even heard of them, never read them. They immediately said yes in July for a story that was going to run in January. And I needed an editor, to be blunt, who is older and smarter and really knows his game, who understood it's going to take us this long. So I started reporting that story in August, and I reported it in August and September. I wrote like the wind. I wrote it in like 3 days, but we needed that much time to do that much reporting. I read entire books. I mean, you name it. It was a huge, I'm thrilled, but it was a shit ton of work and a ton of time. And so you have to back away in terms from your deadline. I just needed time. My husband and I spent 3 weeks driving all across Ontario, which is where I'm from originally. So I had contacts, doing interviews, and he took the photographs. He's a photographer. So it was really fun. We worked as a team. We'd never done that before. But I'll tell you, it was, and this is really important for your listeners to hear this, because, I'm Canadian and I grew up there. I was a medical reporter. So like, I'm ready to go, right? Like, oh yeah, imposter syndrome. And I got the assignment. I was like, shit, I have to explain an entire country to an entire other country, Canada to Americans. Americans have a lot of propaganda fed to them. I get past that. I have to do history. I have to do economics. I have to do politics. I have to do medical stuff. Like, oh shit. And I just thought, is this even possible? But that's my definition of fun. I'm not just a weirdo. Like the stories that scare the shit out of me are the stories I want to do, because they're so complicated. My brain's like, let's go, and it sounds arrogant. And I'm a racehorse. Like, I don't want to trot around the block. I want to be like, okay, let's pound this thing out. I want it to be hard. And again, I've done this for a long time. So like, the 1,000 words hits, they're money. I'm glad to have money, but that's not challenging for me. 5,000 words on an entire country's health system. Oh yeah, that was challenging, but I'm really proud of it. And this is true. He had like 5 questions on 5,000 words. Seriously.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's not unusual for me, because I think I just report the hell out of things, and I sort of know how to write and I knew what I wanted to say. And it was a series of stories. One of the things I want to share really quickly, which is, I think we don't talk about enough as writers, is how do you tell a great story? So my dad's a filmmaker, and I watch movies like all the time. It's my thing. I'm completely obsessed with film. So I think cinematically. And I've never trained in this. It's just how I think. So, close up, medium shot, long shot, establishing shot, all that stuff. It's the same inside a story, inside a long story. You have characters, you have development, you have dialogue, you have conflict, you have pacing, all the stuff a good film has. A great story has those things. And I don't think a lot of writers stop to really think about, how am I pulling my reader into this story immediately? So I'll give you an example. So I'm interviewing my cancer researcher this morning. I'm nervous. It's complicated, right? And he's like he's a big deal. These guys are like, it makes me want to cry, because these are the people who are literally curing cancer. Like, this is their job. And in the course of the interview, I discovered that the blood samples that he's working with are actually having to travel around the world. And so I started drilling into like, literally, what airline did they fly on? That's me. That's the kind of reporting I do. I'm just like, oh, I got shipped around the world. I'm like, no, what airline, who brought it? Give me the details. And that's, I think, to be the way to make a great story, is to get into the most specific details, because my reader has to be with me. I want my reader beside me, smelling it, hearing it, feeling it, scared, moved, laughing. That's our job. That is, because that's what films do. Think about the films that make you laugh and make you cry and whatever, right? Great writing does that. And I just feel like we don't talk about craft. I'm going on endlessly, but I feel like we don't talk about craft enough. We talk about, God bless it, get the money, right? We need money, but you have to create something of value. for you, not just for them, right? Like at least once a year, you have to say, that's my showcase clip. That's the piece that, God forbid, if Abby died tomorrow, Abby's like, I did that. And I think we forget that. And I think it's easy to just get caught up in like, oh my God, I have bills, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's what a lot of us talk about. And it's, gosh, what was I going to say? I've just lost my train of thought. You were talking about showcase clips. And I was going to say, I put out a tweet the other day that I do in some ways think about my legacy, and people thought that was really strange because I'm 26 years old, and I'm like, no. Listen, as call me paranoid or whatever you want, but I don't know what's going to happen to this country in the next month. It may not be like, there may not be a media industry as we know it for very much longer. And so if this career was taken away from me, I don't even have to be dead. It's like, if something happens and I can no longer do this work, what will I have left behind me? And so this op-ed that I wrote that got me so much hate definitely felt like it fell into that category of thing that I was really proud of. I got paid $75 for it. Definitely not worth the hate mail. But it was one of those things that I was like, I'm really proud that I did this, even though it was really vulnerable for me to write this in the first place. And even though I got a lot of hate for it, because I was thinking in that way, like, I don't know if there's going to be free press 6 months from now. And so I think
that's, I agree. And to your larger point, and I this is why I love you, because you think seriously, you're an old soul, so at 26, but I really mean that. I mean, I had my dream job at 26. I was a reporter at the Globe and Mail, and that was the job I'd wanted my whole life. And then I left 2.5 years later because I was bored. God help me. Legacy really matters. I don't have kids, and I don't have nieces or nephews. I got nothing. I got no grandkids. That's it. That's me. I'm dead. I'm ashes in a can. So I think about this quite a lot. My husband has a Pulitzer from the Times, and I'm really proud of the family Pulitzer. It's not mine. So we're
a Pulitzer.
There you go. So we're both pretty clear what we've accomplished, but we're also really lucky we had an industry that was in much better shape, because we're older. We had 3 great jobs. He was at the Times for 31 years. My God, who does that? And I think legacy is really important because what it does is it anchors you, Abby, to your values. And I really admire this about you. And I admire this about very few writers, frankly. I think a lot of people out for money and fame, and the hell with them. They don't care. I have to tell you, I mean, I'm incredibly proud of this book. I had people who wrote to me and said, you saved my life. You've explained my story. When I wrote Blown Away, I knew this was not going to be a well-bought book. I didn't care. Because I knew in my mind, I knew exactly who I wanted to buy the book. I'll tell you about the book. The Federal Law Enforcement Training Agency. Are you kidding me? All the Ivy schools and all the Ivy law libraries. That's a hell of an honor for a Canadian who doesn't even own a gun. But that tells you the depth of my work. And so and that book came out in 2004, but it stands today. It needs to be updated. I think it's really important at every stage in your career. Take yourself seriously. Irony's cute, right? But enough of the LOLs. What is your legacy intellectually? And if you're not achieving it, what's holding you back from it? Right now I've got these 2 books I want to write, and I'm really pissed off. I applied for a grant of $11,000, and the odds were terrible. Like 20% of people get it, and I didn't get it. So what did I do? Sit in bed and sulk? No, the next day I reached out to somebody to start making introductions for me instead. Like, that's me. I'm just like, I don't give up. At a certain point I probably will, because I'm really getting tired of this bloody book idea. But it's a really good idea. And it is a bit of a legacy, this thing that I want to do. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I think by not taking ourselves seriously as human beings, you do yourself a disservice.
Yeah,
I know that's very serious, but I'm okay with that.
No, I couldn't agree more. People, I think that's something that I struggle with, being as quote unquote young as I am, which I recently got told I was too old to write for a publication for the first time last week. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not even 30 yet. Like, is this really starting to happen to me? This is beginning to happen. Like, you hear all about how after you turn 30, you're, just thrown into the social.
That's it. You're dead.
Dumpster. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? I'm 20. I'll be 27 in February, and I'm old.
That's it, girl. You're toast.
Fucking resign me to the garbage heap, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, God.
Anyway, yeah, I struggle to connect with people and writers my own age sometimes, and I think that's part of it because I am quite a serious person, and it can be.
Which I admire. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, I really do. It's one of the reasons that I wanted, and I'm so glad we're doing this. It's one of the reasons I sort of found you on Twitter and followed you on Twitter. And I'm like, yeah, this is a woman who cares deeply about what she's doing. You know, the money struggles, like welcome to the world with, you know, writing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say something not very nice. I think peer pressure is bullshit. You know, I don't buy it. Like, I just don't care. And social media is a nightmare because everybody's like, oh, my money, my this, my book deal, my movie deal. Like, whatever. Okay, that's nice. And I tweeted when I didn't get the grant, and a lot of people liked it and retweeted it. I'm like, listen, we don't get everything we try for. Right. And obviously I'm successful and I've punched a lot of my tickets. I'm very proud of that. But there's still stuff I want to get done, you know? And I think taking yourself seriously, to be blunt, I think it just makes other people nervous because they're not doing that. And I think you and any writer who does should be incredibly proud of that. And not in some pompous like, oh, I write for the Times. Like, whatever, I write for the Times too. You know, get over yourself. And I have a staff job at the Post. I don't really care. Lucky you won the lottery. A lot of people don't get those jobs now. And I think when you're freelance especially, it's very easy to go, well, I'm only this. Give me a break. If you're producing smart, deep, thoughtful writing, you're making a contribution intellectually to the larger cultural conversation. And that is something to be proud of. And some people want to write about mascara, that's great. And some people want to write about like the latest hotel, that's great. That's not me, and it's probably not you. And so, you know what? Know your strengths and stick to them.
Yeah. I mean, I do the fluff when I have to. Animal Crossing, I write a lot about Animal Crossing. I've probably done $2,000 in bylines on that video game alone.
Good.
Yeah, and it is not as, but you know what? That's not true. I do still find ways to make it deep. Like, how can we make players with vitiligo feel more welcome? Like, it is, you know what? That's just how I am. I can't leave it.
I like it.
I like it. But I do want to ask you more about your about Blown Away, which I need to read. I haven't read it, so I'm gonna have to get a copy. But anyways, you told me that while you were reporting for that book, you experienced or had secondhand trauma, and I want to ask what you meant by that and how it has affected you.
Yeah. So long term, it hasn't officially. So the secondary trauma, which Lola referenced in her interview with you, is really important and not talked about a lot. So secondary trauma comes when you as a writer are doing serious dark stuff like sexual violence, conflicts, wars, rape, crime, courts, police. I mean, there's a lot of things that a beat reporter could run into, also freelancers, that are just really heavy. And what it happens is, it's a clinical term. So you're listening to the story because you're taking notes and you're taking whatever. And ideally your heart and head are engaged. It's not just like, oh, that's nice, and you walk away. And your head is like a colander, like it's coming through you, right? And so then you're writing it down, and it's very hard to not have any feelings about things. And so even subconsciously, you are absorbing some very dark, heavy stuff. And I got secondary trauma. I was in New Orleans. I was staying in a boarding house for a couple of days doing some reporting, and it wasn't really bad. I mean, I had some nightmares and insomnia, which is very rare for me, for both. I had a therapist and I had a minister, and I used to go and just kind of like offload, okay, here's something really dark, heavy stuff. They're trained to deal with it. I'm not. I don't watch horror films. I don't like a lot of violence. I don't want to be around people yelling and screaming. Like I don't think I'm hypersensitive, but I've heard and seen some really horrific things, and I won't forget them, even if I'd like to. So it's affected me. I'm not traumatized, but in the middle of reporting that for a year and a half and steeped in violence, you know, in stories of violence, yeah, you're going to be disturbed. And if you're not, then you really need help, because then you're desensitized.
When you say steeped in violence, do you mean, you know, were you speaking to families who had experienced gun violence? Okay. So
absolutely. So yeah, so I'll give you an example, and this is absolutely accurate. So I interviewed a woman who, I mean, this is crazy. So she lived in, like as you did, she lived in a trailer, and she's in bed, and somebody breaks into the door and starts shooting her. Like, she never explained why this was her life, but this is what happened. So she was shot point blank. It's pretty scary stuff. And that's where I got the title, Blown Away, because when you're hit by gunfire, you are blown away physically. And she chased the guy into her front yard and shot him. And I think killed him, probably killed him. Yeah, killed him. And this was years ago, and she said, so I have a picture. And I said, I'm sorry, what? She said, I have a picture of the dead guy in the mud in my front yard. Do you want to see it? I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Send me the picture of the dead guy in the mud. I mean, this is the point to which you have to sort of seal yourself off from like crying and screaming, because if you feel that way, you're not going to write this book. And she sent the photograph, and my husband has done really dark reporting as a Times photographer. And I said, honey, can you take a look at the picture? And is it okay? Can I look at it? He goes, yeah, it's just a dead guy in the mud. And I wrote a piece for the Dart Center at Columbia, which focuses on trauma, on exactly what happened, that this showed me we were both somewhat desensitized. So it's tricky. I had a woman whose husband was shot point blank beside her lying in their driveway. I mean, this is very, very heavy stuff. And some of the reviewers even said, my gosh, this is very graphic. It's not voyeuristic. Come on, if you're going to write about gun violence, don't mince words. I think that's half the problem. You know, people really don't have an understanding what this does to you. I had planned, Abby, to go into a trauma ward for my reporting. I thought of going to a trauma ward, probably in Detroit or Baltimore, where their GSWs, gunshot wounds, are like a dime a dozen. I know my limits. I knew I couldn't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. Even if they let me in, even with HIPAA, I just thought, you're not going to survive that. So I didn't. So sometimes there's reporting that I will pull myself back from to say, I can't take the hit on this emotionally. It's too much. The book has plenty of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've read also some articles of, you know, by trauma surgeons who advocate for almost said advocate for gun violence, advocate for gun control. And they'll say, you know, you don't understand what a bullet does to the human body. You have no idea what it looks like until you've seen it. The only thing that ever came close was, and I've killed one thing in my life, and I will never pick up a gun to kill another thing unless it's in self-defense again. Because I killed a deer. And of course, this is nowhere near the level of, I have seen a dead body before, and it was very disturbing, but I didn't have anything to do with it, so it was a little bit different. But I shot the deer, and I was aiming for its neck, and I missed a little bit, so it was more in the shoulder, and so he didn't die immediately. And when that happens,
it's horrifying. Yeah.
Well, what happens is, if you're hunting for meat, like I did as a kid, the longer the animal is stressed, the worse the meat tastes. So you have to kill it yourself by hand now. And so we had to slit the deer's throat. And it was like, I mean, I was a vegetarian for a decade. So, you know, when I turned 18, I stopped eating meat, and I recently took a break, but we'll go back to being a vegetarian soon. And it's like, I mean, that stuff really sticks with you. And that was for an animal, not even a person.
Oh yeah. No, I took a gun training course, and I did a lot of shooting with a handgun. I understood within seconds what it's like to hold a gun and shoot a gun and fire a gun, and it's no fooling around. And the gun class that I took was quite something. And we all sat in a classroom and discussed when we would shoot. And then what they teach you in gun class, and this is very, very serious, you don't aim for the elbow, you don't aim for the knee, you aim for the heart and lungs, because that stops somebody literally dead. You do not mess around, which has moral, ethical, and legal consequences. Are you ready for this? I talk about all this in the book. I mean, my book is very layered and very nuanced. It's not just like, you know, boom, boom, boom. I went very deep into the literature and talked to 104 people. So, I mean, nobody had done this book before or since.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of that. But yeah, I hear you. Some of it can scar you for a long time.
Well,
I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
I was going to say, as you should be proud of it, and it's still obviously very relevant, even more so as we move into this like really weird right-wing militia age, but that's an entirely different can of.
There you go.
Okay, so what is something that you wish, this is on a much lighter note, what's something that you wish writers and freelancers knew before they started freelancing? Because you've kind of done both, right? You've been a staffer, you've been a freelancer. So if you were starting out right now and going to be a brand new freelancer, like what's something you wish that everybody would know?
Save money. Okay. Save money. I mean, that's just a boring mom thing to say, and I don't have kids. If you don't have money in the bank, you're absolutely at the mercy of everything. You know, right now I'm working on a story that I thought would take a week. It's taken more than a month, and I asked to get paid half up front, and they said no. So that's a whole month. I'm not getting the money that I was counting on for that month. I have other money in the bank because it's been a good year and I save money, and that's how I live. I think it doesn't even matter how talented you are, hardworking, I don't care what you bring to the table. There are going to be months where you are paid late. And I used to have a line of credit for $20,000 that the bank took away in 2008 after the crash. They just said, you're done, for no reason. I don't have that line of credit, and I don't use credit cards to pay my bills. I sort of, this is what I need to make. Let's go make it every month. But if it doesn't come that month, what are you going to do? So I just urge every would-be freelancer, you just can't sort of go on a wing and a prayer because it's just too stressful. I see people working, nights, weekends, holidays. Okay, freelance should have the word free that means something. And if you are constantly anxious about money, and I know, Abby, you often are, it's too stressful. And I'm not saying be rich. I'm not saying that at all. But I just think if you can somehow like have a side hustle and whatever it happens to be a waitress, be a bartender. I worked at the North Face selling freaking t-shirts for $11 an hour. And I was not a teenager because in the depths of the recession, I just needed cash every single week. And that in 2011 was giving me about $250 a month. Okay, that then was gas and groceries. That was real cash every single week. I was freelancing for the New York Times and working at $11 an hour. Well, why would I do both? Because I needed ready cash and I have no pride. And it turned into a book, but it wasn't done for a book. So I think a lot of it is just being really ready to understand the financials of running your business when you can't count on, frankly, anything but yourself and your good health and your talent. But if you've got a cushion of at least a month, 6 weeks, 2 months, you can breathe. You can breathe. You're not constantly hounding people. Where's my money? Where's the assignment? Because I know, Abby, I know that you have that pressure. And I was single for a long time in freelance and had that pressure. But pay rates were higher and there was more work. It was a different time 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think things have definitely changed, but that's not to say that, I was kind of like, when you said, hey, I had my dream job at 26 and I left because I, was bored, I really resonate with that because I left my dream job a year ago when I was 25 because I hated it and I was miserable and I felt like I was wasting away in this office. And here's the thing, I quit in November, not knowing about the end of year budget desert that is freelancing, and I'm getting scared because it's coming back up again. But okay. I didn't know. So I walked out in November and I every pitch was oh, we love that idea, but we don't have the budget right now. But then the pandemic hit. So it's if I hadn't left in November, would I have left in the middle of a pandemic? Probably not. Would I be here now? No, probably not. So in some ways, I wish I could go back and say that I had waited, that I had been more financially prepared, but I also understand that this year is really different and it's kind of hard to say how it would have gone. But certainly I didn't expect it to be as stressful as it was. I mean, in February I was crying because my card got declined trying to buy ramen noodles. Shit is hard. And, moving into the late summer and fall, things have really been different. And I had felt that oh, I can take a day off if I want to. What is this madness? So I get what you're saying because, we don't do our best work when we're suffering. And, if you have to sort of swallow a little bit of ego and have I worked at a bakery part-time in the spring with the promise of getting healthcare. And then of course was employed. So
I think a lot of writers are very invested, and I'm not going to be very nice about this. I think people get very invested in I'm a writer. Okay, you know what? Go look at some of the biggest, best known writers ever that we really admire years later, and they did other things. They were bank clerks, or they worked in an insurance company. William Carlos Williams was a very admired poet, I believe was a physician, and wrote poems on the side. There is no harm in making money doing something that pays the bills, that allows you to write something smart and serious, because books don't pay well unless you're a star. Very few people get a big advance. If by big, I mean $100,000. People have these wild fantasies. Oh, I'm going to get 100 grand for my advance. Oh, really? Then you would be in a very small minority. And I say that having written 2 books, and I didn't get 100 for either book. And I'm fine saying that. People need to know this. That money doesn't just exist on trees because you want it to be there. And so there's this snobbery about, when I worked at this retail job, it was tough. I'm not going to mince words. Jesus. I had people leaning over the cash register, telling me how to spell the names of the fucking towns in the county that I've lived in for 20 years. Don't start with me. And I just had to nod and smile like a robot with my plastic badge. Yeah. But you know what? It makes for a great book. It made for a terrific book that got great reviews. So you know what? You swallow your ego, you swallow your pride, you get the food on the table. Do what you have to do. I just think this is a really false elitism, and I don't admire it at all. And that's where some of the best writing comes from, is, let's face it, having a real life and not just living in some sort of fantasy world. They're like, oh, I'm a writer. I couldn't possibly be a barista. go look at one of the people I admire tremendously, Brandon Smith, who's a very hotshot writer. He's in his early 30s. CJR wrote about him when he was like your age. And he's been a barista until 6 months ago. Give me a break. Who cares? He does terrific work. He's a young guy. And we met on Twitter because I admired not only his writing, but his ability to just get shit done. So those are the people I really admire, not people with the big bylines at the New York or whatever. What are you making? Like 300 a year? Good for you. I mean, 1,000. I mean, a lot of money. Like, I can't relate to you. I relate to the people who are out there hustling, working hard, having ideas, trying for shit they don't always get. The grant I didn't get. I'm pissed. What are you going to do? I mean, somebody else got it. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of what we do. There's no guarantees for stuff. I just think, you just do what you have to do.
Yeah. I got up this morning and I pitched that story that, the Times rejected me for and then assigned to some other person for whatever reason. And I started pitching it again. Like, that's
good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got up.
What else?
We're going to do it.
So, I mean, the other thing I would say to a new freelancer is, do your homework, do your due diligence. And not that you didn't, but, there are editors who are known to be a little shady, so you don't work for them. And the more you network, you and I have got to know each other, there's writers groups, whatever, do your homework. And you might find out, oh, that person's known to be a bit of a dick. So, okay, but it's really prestigious. Yeah, but they're going to treat you like garbage. So how badly do you want this?
Usually when you hear people say, do your homework, it's in regards to make sure you read the publication and find out if your pitch is a good fit. But that's a different kind of homework. And I think, that's a nuance that I haven't even really, considered. And I'm using it as an example. Obviously, I'm over it. It's part of the fucking job. So I don't really care. It's not the first time I've been scooped or whatever you want to call that. But that's a really interesting perspective on do your homework because you hear about it in such different ways.
No, I think it's really important. I mean, I've got, I call them my posse. I've got a group of, I don't know, dozens of people that I really trust and like. And before I'll work for somebody, I might say, have you worked with them? What do you think? What do they like? Because again, to go back to what we just talked about, people are very focused on prestige. The New Yorker, the Times, the Washington Post, which is awesome. I've had 100 pieces in the Times. I'm proud of it, whatever. But some of the people in there, they're not nice. Mm-hmm. They are not nice people. Some are fantastic. And that's just one publication. So you got to find out. So you got to talk to people like, oh, I'm thinking of pitching, blah, blah, blah. And it's the Times. I'll be like, yeah, that person isn't going to treat you well, or that person doesn't treat ideas well. And you can take my word for it or not, but you asked my advice and I have worked with this person, or I've talked to enough people who have done that. It's called due diligence, because you don't want to get your ass in a sling and have a great idea. And then it's sat on, I think you and I are in study hall and I see every single day people going, I've been ghosted for 6 months. And some of these are the biggest places you've ever heard of. I'm like, to me, there's no prestige worth it. There's no magazine out there. There's no publication out there that is worth that much drama.
You couldn't pay.
And that's why I do my due diligence.
And
no. I would rather do.
Stop, but
I'd rather do content marketing. Yeah, I'm doing content marketing and I'm really proud of it. One's for a cancer research foundation and one's for an agency in Helsinki, of all places. And I'm thrilled. It's good money, nice people, bada bing. It's not, is it prestigious? I don't know. That doesn't interest me. Those are not my goals. This is what we were tweeting about this as well. You have to decide, what are your goals? What are your priorities? What are your values? What are your principles? Those are very old fashioned words and I'm fine with all of them. And I don't think we talk about that enough. And decide what you want to do and then go do it. And just ignore all the noise. We left high school a long time ago. Let's leave that thinking back there somewhere.
Yeah.
We're grown-ups now. Right?
It's so interesting to me because in the last week alone, and I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to give them what they're looking for. But in the past week, I've seen a couple of people try to start up drama about how much a specific writer makes or how they make it. And it's you could have, there's a difference between critiquing the industry and starting high school petty shit with a singular writer. And you could have spent that hour pitching. You could have spent that hour coming up with an idea. And so it amazes me how much drama there is in the writing community. You're right.
Well, but attach that to the flip side of it, which is insecurity. I mean, I've done this for a really long time. I started writing for a living when I was 19. It's a long time ago. Been there, seen it. I mean, I've had people say things about me that are absolutely hilarious. They're so wrong and they're lies. I'm like, so basically you're just envious. So I feel sorry for you. End of story, move on.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I just think there's a lot of insecurity. And so people sort of will blow themselves up to feel better. I'm like, just go do something. I'd rather just go like do laundry, frankly. You know, it's not worth it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't respond to people when they do the trolling, hate mail, threatening DMs. Like, you're not going to get a rise out of me. I might post about it because I want my followers to know what's happening, or you know what? Fuck, it feels good when people are like, that's unfair. People shouldn't be saying that to you. Like, it feels good to get support. So I might post something like that, but you're not going to get a response to me because you're not worth my time. It's that, you know, that daring greatly sort of concept that Brene Brown talks about. Like, you're not going to throw shit at me from the nosebleeds. Like, you're not going to buy the cheap seats and throw garbage at me, because I'm not going to fucking put up with that. You know what? You can get down in here with me and we can duke it out there, but you're not going to sit up in the fucking nosebleeds and jeer at me. It's not going to happen. So I just don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of, the social media can be, you and I have met, and I'm delighted we did, and I've got some great work contacts and some new friends, and I really love Twitter for the things that it has brought me, because it's basically brought me everything that's pleasant. I don't get trolled. I don't deal in politics. I don't deal in religion. I don't talk about guns on the internet. Like, I'm not stupid. I don't talk about puppies and kittens. I do serious stuff and love puppies and kittens too. But I'm selective and I'm strategic. So if you're not going to be that, well, have a nice day. Mm-hmm. So I take your point and I know what we're talking about. I also think it's a little tricky to go on and say, I made, $X,000 this month, because some people didn't. And some people are really angry and pissed and envious. And, it's a hard time for people. So talking about money when you're a writer is a very, very delicate thing to do, which is why I told you I didn't make $100,000 on either book, because I'm sure people assumed that I did. I didn't. I wish I did. I didn't.
Yeah, I definitely have. I even said, this conversation that we're having about like salary or whatever, however you want to put it, makes me rethink how transparent I am, if only because I've got shit to do. Like, I don't have time to mitigate people's emotions. So I get that people are upset. Like I said, I was crying in February and thought I'd never get out of bed because I couldn't afford fucking ramen noodles. So like, I get it. But at the same time, I don't know. There's a tightrope that I'm learning how to walk. I'm trying to be transparent to help people, but also I understand that there is sensitivity around it because I was there 6 months ago. So
it's very difficult also, and this is really important, and I see this in some of the groups online. I don't have an answer for it. We're in a global economy. And so I will say to somebody, 25 cents a word is a shitty rate, because it is for me. Sitting in New York, my health insurance is $1,500 a month. Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, that's not a joke. It's not a joke. My husband's diabetic. I had breast cancer. We don't mess around. Okay, so you can have a cheap health insurance. That's great. Maybe you're really healthy and young, but that's not us. But my point is, if somebody in India thinks 25 cents a word is an awesome amount of money, which it may well be for her in that economy, then a conversation between somebody sitting in suburban New York and a writer in India is going nowhere fast. Mm-hmm. So that to me is part of the problem. It isn't just the beginning writer in America or Canada in a developed nation. It could be, a very experienced writer in a place where, guess what? The costs are very, very different. The cost structure is different, and what looks like not great to us. So I think these conversations about money are complicated. I tend to have them only privately with people that I trust. I don't do them publicly online. There's no upside in that. None. Just, there isn't any. I don't do it. I see too much drama coming out of it, a lot of envy, a lot of anger, and I'm not going to play. It just doesn't help.
And I, even in the writers group that I have going right now, we have a girl who moved from, she's American. She's back in New York now, but she just came from Rwanda. And so she was like, the reason I'm doing this is because when I was living in Rwanda, I could do a piece or two a month. Yeah. And now I can't. So I have to increase, my workload. So even if you don't permanently live in those economies, if you're just traveling, a travel writer, what have you, it can still affect you differently. But on that note, you also offer consulting. And I wanted to ask you about that because I'm not sure what your coaching and consulting service looks like.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So it's a set rate. It's $250 an hour, which is expensive. And I know that, and other people are cheaper, and it is what it is. So it's really whatever anybody wants it to be. I'm kind of like, the writing whisperer. So I've worked with 40 people around the world, New Zealand, Singapore, Romania, you name it, Skype, Zoom, anybody can be anywhere. And it's everything from, I have a book idea and I've written 2 well-reviewed books, to say, okay, let's talk about that. Have you ever a proposal? What's your structure? Who's your audience? Like, I can talk stuff through. People send me pitches. I'm like, let's sharpen those pitches. They're not working. Okay, this is why they're not working. Or it's an essay. Let me read the essay and critique it. It's a huge range of things. Sometimes people just want to brainstorm. Like, here I am in my career. I'm feeling a bit stuck. what's sort of my next step. So it's really anything. I mean, I've worked with 3 major papers. I've written 2 books. I won a national magazine award in Canada. I've been a magazine editor. I mean, I've kind of done it all. So I feel very comfortable talking to lots of people at different levels about what they want. And if I feel like I can't be helpful, I'll say, yeah, that's probably not a great fit. But in an hour, I give a lot of value. So yes, it's an investment. 250, yes, it's a big amount of number for some people. And even for me, 250 is a lot. And I'll pay that to other people, which I have. I did that last month. I hired an immigration attorney to find out how to get out of the States if you know who wins. Not kidding. So, it's an investment. You make a decision that I really need to fix this problem, or I want to sharpen this skill. And I'm always happy to talk to people. I love doing it. And I get really lovely feedback. People are really appreciative. Some of my clients become really good friends. So it's something I love doing. And
so I should link to your website in the video description, right? Is that how people?
That'd be great. Thanks. Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
I'm trying to make sure, because some people are like, oh, DM me on Twitter. And some people are like, oh, come find me on email. And I'm like, well, I just want to make sure that we're putting down.
Thanks. Yeah. No, the website's good. Thank you.
It's so interesting because I'm looking outside right now and it's like cloudy and gray here, and it looks not that way there, but it also looks later in the afternoon because you're an hour ahead of me. So it's just.
Yeah. The sun's about to come over the balcony, but yeah, no, it's a weird day. We actually, I think we're getting some of the smoke from like the west. The sunset yesterday was crazy. It was just a big orange ball in this gray sky. It was quite mysterious and beautiful, but I don't think it was supposed to look like that.
Yeah, it's terrible what's going on around America, but we could talk about that all day. Oh, I don't.
We will. We'll do that tomorrow.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go get a burrito because I haven't eaten today because I've been hunting down sources for AARP.
Oh, good for you. How's it going?
I'm super grateful for AARP. It's I'm covering sex and dating and relationships, which is what my copywriting client, my main client, is about. So it's in my wheelhouse, and it's one of the few remaining dollar a word. It's hard to find sources.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to find people over 50 who are like, yeah, I'm like fucking every day. Like, that's really hard to connect with.
True. This is true.
But other than that, other than the difficulty in finding sources, I have really, really enjoyed working for them. And the editors, great. They pay super fast, which we love.
Perfect. So it's good. That's good. I'm glad. That's great.
Well, I will be sure to, first of all, like I said, it'll be about a week before this is up because I'm going to.
Yeah, no rush. Yeah.
Transcribes for me because I do not have time to transcribe all my interviews.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we'll get it up and I'll send you the link and we'll make sure to plug your website.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun. I hope it was useful for you. Hope we gave some good advice.
Well, it's, what I love about this writer interview series that I've been doing, even if it helps no one else, like I've talked to people from so many different experience backgrounds and people who are in different places in their career. And so it's really nice to hear from not only people around the world, because I'm really lucky that literally I have writers from, I feel like every country. That's not that's
great. That's so cool.
It's not really true, but I have writers from all over the world who DM me and I get to talk to all these people who, like you, it's like, oh, well, you've heard about doing your homework, but have you thought about it this way? So it's just really, I think, important to stretch ourselves a little bit. And I find these very helpful and developmental for me. So
cool. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate that we talked a lot about, more about craft, because I just feel like it's great to talk about money and pitching, and lots of editors know how to do that. And, I read Lola's thing and that was great. And she does it her way. And I'm 100% the different. I'm completely opposite. I pitch very little, partly because my pressure's less financially, but partly because I just work in a different style. And that's cool.
It reminds me of this. I don't remember exactly what Steve Martin said, but he did this master class. And I just remember him saying, don't focus on being successful, focus on being good. And I'm so split on that quote because there's a part of me that really resonates with that because I do want to be good. And then there's a part of me that's like, but you don't understand. So it's really interesting to sit with that. And I think about that quote a lot. So even though it challenges me, I still hold that. And I still resonate with that, don't focus on being successful, focus on just being good.
But when you say successful, I want to just stick with this for 1 second because this is really important. In America, successful only means I make a lot of money. There are a million ways to be successful. I got a letter. I've been doing Zoom classes with journalism students and I'm loving it. Pro bono. It's just like a thing I'm doing for fun. And I got a letter from one of my articles from a mother of a woman who said, "You saved my life. I'm successful. Okay, I die tomorrow, I'm successful. Am I wealthy? Am I making like $10,000 a story? No. You know, and I've had amazing years financially. I'm not having a great year financially this year necessarily compared to other people. It's fine for me. I'm getting the bills paid. I'm bought a new sofa, so I'm good. You know, I'm successful of it. To me, the dollar metric is really, really damaging. Really, and I really want you to think about that. And anybody watching and listening to this, really get that through your brain, because somebody's always going to make more, and then you'll feel like shit. My attitude is get your bills paid, save for retirement, have a cushion, and you know what? Enough. It's not, because at the end of your life, it's not how much money you made. It's what's the life that you created. And that's really different. To me, success is the life. It's not the dollars. You need the dollars, no question. I'm not being stupid about this. But I just think focusing on a dollar amount to measure your value is very damaging. And it's very common. It's very American, which is why I'm glad I lived in 5 countries, because it's not how every country measures success. You know,
there's a part of me, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, please.
I was going to say, there's a part of me that wants to challenge that and say, well, it's not about how much we make. It's about being able to pay the bills and being able to, be comfortable, because in America it can be kind of difficult to be comfortable. But then there's a part of me that also in the last few days has been thinking about, I started this writers program and I felt like it was a win. And then as soon as I was in between payments, I kind of felt like shit again. And I have begun to realize that when you hit a certain level, there's always, like you said, there's always going to be someone who's making more.
Always.
You see it on the horizon and you go, that's what I really want. And when it's like a shallow material thing, when you arrive at that horizon, you're like, oh, you're reaching for the next thing down the line. Like there's always something more. So it's interesting, because at first, like maybe even 2 weeks ago, I might have been like, well, it's just really hard to be comfortable in this country sometimes, which is also true. Mm-hmm. But I can also tell you, like, as I have been somewhat more comfortable, even in the last 2 to 3 months, it still is not enough, quote unquote. And so I know that there's this really probably spiritual or mental health type of hole that I have to fill. And that until that happens, I'll never feel successful, because you're right. Success is not just about money. You could always make more.
But that hole, if I can just continue this and edit the hell out of it, that hole is not unique to you. That is a culturally determined hole. And it's a really damaging one. I mean, I lived in France, I lived in Mexico, I lived in England, I lived in Canada. If I died tomorrow, I have a really good marriage, been 20 years with my husband. I have deep friendships, written a couple of good books. Yes, thank God there's some money in the bank, and a surprising amount, because I live pretty cheaply, which is a choice that I made, because I didn't have to have like the Prada handbag, the latest phone, the latest computer. I don't give a shit about that stuff. I give a shit. I don't measure my value in the world by what other people think of me. And everybody does, like, how could you say that? Because I really don't. I'm glad you like me. I'm glad my husband loves me. I'm glad my friends love me. And after that, I really don't care anymore. Obviously, I want professional relationships that function well. I'm not dismissive of that. But I think you have to get really, really clear at a certain point, and younger's better than later. What is my value in this world? And your human value, Abby, is enormous. It is enormous. Your generosity, your wit, your compassion, your intelligence. There's no dollar sign for that. And I say that with complete sincerity. And I wish more people said that to each other, because it's really true. And I wish we said this to each other more often. My value in this world, yeah, there's some money in the bank. If I died tomorrow, my husband's got some chunk of change coming, but he'll miss the living hell out of me for me, not because of my goddamn books, or not because of I'd made X $1,000 this month, which is not to denigrate people who do. That's not what I'm doing. But the people who say, but I'm successful because I made all this money. How's your marriage? How's your friendships? How are your kids doing? How's your pet doing? You know, it's about human relationships. And I know I'm being a bit passionate, but I feel strongly about this. I feel that this is a real challenge for people to get past and to focus on other things.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I don't have a lot of money, but one of the things that I sleep really well on at night is knowing that there are 2 very special needs rescue animals in my house right now, one of which would have been put down if I had not showed up for him. It was his last day on this planet. Like, They were
Oh,
putting him down. So the shelter was closing because they'd run out of money. And so it was down to euthanasia. And I
oh,
said, please, I'm at work today. It's a Friday. Can you hold him till in the morning? I'll be there at like 8 a.m. I don't care what time I need to be there. And they
oh.
did. And so I went and got him, and I was able to find someone to adopt the other remaining cat. So the cats got out.
That's great. That's great.
That is one of my favorite things about myself, is like how much I give to animals. And I feel like a very successful pet parent, even though
You're a very successful, but this is what makes you a successful person. And I just, I'm probably sounding like your mom, and I'm not, obviously, but as a friend, I mean, that's huge. That kind of compassion, that kind of commitment, that kind of energy, that kind of like, this is going to happen, there's no dollar sign for that. Like when we write our resume, it's like, where'd you go to school? What'd you study? What job did you have? It's just a freaking piece of paper with a list of like accomplishments. But you and I know you can go work for like really important people with really fancy resumes, and they're the meanest, stupidest people. You're like, yeah, you're accomplished, you're successful, but I wouldn't rescue you if you're bleeding in the gutter in front of me.
I know.
And because we forget we're all human beings, and yeah, we need to make money, and yeah, we need to save money, and yes, we want to go on trips or whatever we want to do with our damn money. But after a certain point, I don't look at somebody making 3 times what I make, which is easily done, and go, well, they're 3 times more successful. Well, I don't know. Have they written a book? No, a lot of them haven't. Have they written a book that the Canadian government flew me to Canada to speak on my research? I'm lecturing tomorrow to a class full of students in Utah because a guy said, I'm teaching this story you wrote. That's successful to me. I lost money on that story. So am I successful? Works for me because I come from a family of freelancers. My dad won the Palme d'Or can't. In my world, and I know this sounds elitist, I'm intellectually successful. That's enough. I'm done. I punched my ticket. There's money in the bank. Thank God. I've worked very hard to get it there and keep it there. But at the end of my day and my life, it's not about the money I made. Absolutely not. The people who come to my funeral, God forbid a few people show up, they're not going to talk about how much money I made. Ever, right?
I'll just be hedgehogs. That's the only people that will show up.
Noodle and all her babies will be there.
It'll be a bunch of fucking hedgehogs at my funeral.
Oh, listen, I love Noodle more than anybody, let me tell you.
I don't know if you've experienced this, but at some point in your life, you have like a thing and people buy you gifts based on that thing. And so
Right.
I got one hedgehog, and now being like, like sometimes you buy your friends like duck items because they really like ducks, or like they like hats, and so you get them, but like no one does that stuff for me. I have hedgehog towels, I have a stuffed hedgehog, I have hedgehog salt and pepper shakers, and none, like I look like I'm obsessed with hedgehogs, but I haven't bought any of that stuff. It's just things that people have given me as gifts, mostly my mother. But it's just interesting, like you get branded as like with a thing, and that's your thing, and people buy you.
I photographed a pair of hedgehog salt and peppers the other day just for you. I haven't sent you the photograph. I didn't buy them for you, but I'm like, that's for Abby.
Send me the photo because I have a growing salt and pepper collection, and they're all
Very important.
So
it's essential.
Yeah,
these are the things that matter.
Oh boy, ramen and salt and pepper shakers. That's how you know.
Oh God, never dull.
Well, listen, thanks for taking some time and chatting with me today.
Thanks, Abby. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I will let you go, and I will let you know as soon as this is live.
Awesome. Give my best to Noodle.
I will. Thank you so much.
Bye, kiddo. Okay. Thanks. Bye.